Hi, I'm Dr. Chloe Carmichael, clinical psychologist and your host of the High Functioning Hotspot, where I get to talk to interesting high-functioning people from all over the world. Today's guest, David Paris, has been a multi-time finalist on America's Got Talent for acrobatic dancing. He's also an author. He's also a New York City school teacher, and he's an incredible story of survivorship from COVID. He was actually hospitalized and in a coma for 32 days and had some incredible stories to share about it. So without further ado, here is David Paris. So David Paris, thank you so much for joining me for the High Functioning Hotspots.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to join you. And I was listening to your other podcasts with people explaining what's high functioning for them, and just so excited to share my story.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm glad you decided to come. So, learning a little bit about you as well. I had a chance to read your bio a little bit, but for listeners, maybe you could just give us a quick overview of yourself and your very interesting background.
Sure. I am a school teacher of 28 years in New York City, a middle school teacher of social emotional learning the last 5 years, and 20 years before that. My biggest claim to fame is I was an America's Got Talent finalist for acrobatic dance and 7-time acrobatic dance champion. So on the weekends, for a very, very long time, I just love throwing people in the air, catching them, looking beautiful, and making people happy, making myself happy. That's my biggest passion. I'm also an author. I wrote 3 adolescent novels for kids, especially for reluctant readers. And I recently just wrote a memoir of my experience with COVID, having been hospitalized 88 days and in a coma for 32 days, and offering both an uplifting and I think pretty funny experience for those people for COVID fatigue. It won't, it'll feel both uplifting and you're guaranteed to laugh. There's lots of great stories in there.
Okay, well, that's good. Everybody likes to laugh. How did you get into acrobatic dance?
Yeah, it was an interesting start. When I started teaching in the South Bronx, all of my students translated for their Spanish-speaking parents for me, and I kind of quickly got it that they weren't translating, that they were acting inappropriately in class, and they probably said, "Oh, my teacher loves me," and I said, "You know what? I really need to learn Spanish. This is not working." So my first year after teaching, I went to Guatemala, learned Spanish in an intensive study, and went to a club, and I saw this really ugly guy dancing with all these beautiful women. And I thought to myself, I have to learn how to dance. This is just great. And I came back to New York and I said, this is the best place in the world to learn partner dancing and Latin dancing. And I studied under the Mambo King. And I gotta say, I was really bad at it, but I did not give up. It was something that was such a pleasure to be dancing with women, dancing this beautiful music. And eventually I said, you know what, I want to join a team. And they said, look, you're not that good, but maybe you could do the lifting. So that's when I got into acrobatic dancing. I joined a team in which the leader of the team said, you know what, my wife and I fight all the time. Can you do the lifting? So all these great dancers would come on stage looking beautiful. And halfway through, I'd come in, throw her up in the air, flip her, crowd go crazy, and I'd go off stage. And it turned out that to some degree, I was the best part of the show. And I thought to myself, maybe forget this dancing thing. Maybe I'll just do the acrobatics as dance. And that launched my acrobatic version of the career, which now is a little more popular, but back then was unheard of.
Wow, that's amazing. So I have to applaud your adaptability. One of the markers of high functioning people really is the ability to be adaptive. It's nice to be able to choose a goal and be tenacious about it. But at the same time, we have to be adaptable. So it's awesome that you were able to say, okay, well, I wanted to, be dancing on stage, but it looks like maybe my skill set is to be on stage as part of the dance, but maybe doing a slightly different role. And you were able to locate and really play to your strengths. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, they really focus on the belief and the power of just believing in yourself. And I do believe in that too, until I saw myself on video. And I thought, and reality hit me hard in the face when, as much as I begged the different teachers and promoters to say, hey, can you get me on stage? And they all said no. That's when it became clear I got to adapt to something different.
But that again, I think that's really the mark of a high functioning person, instead of getting mad at those people and kind of shooting the messenger, that you were able to say to yourself, like, okay, well, what parts of this are in my control? How can I just, keep it moving basically? And so that's what you did. So that's awesome. And then how did it all culminate in you eventually getting onto America's Got Talent?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on season 4. The story I like to tell, though, is I was actually trying out on season 2 as a Jacob Javits Center with 10,000 people. And on season 2, we did the exact same routine, audition routine. In season 4, we didn't get beyond the associate to the associate producer in the first round. They cut us and they said, oh, well, we'll call you. And every day I would call them back and say, are you calling me yet? Are you calling me yet? And then they didn't. And again, I didn't give up. And in this case, I didn't adapt. I really believed in our story. And at the time, my dance partner and I don't know what changed, but probably was the story behind who we were. Season 4, we got married and they loved that story. So suddenly it became like a, intermediate level worldwide talent to, oh, they have a beautiful story. So in season 4, they totally went with that marriage story and the love, and they totally got these clips of me massaging her feet and being so kind, and a picnic it was a beautifully crafted reality show. And we do something special. My partner's 100 pounds. I'm on a good day, quite more than that. And she lifts me over her back. And that was like the big routine where she lifts me, which I'm 2.5 times, sometimes more than that, than her weight. So we did that on the show, and it was interesting. We tried out again season 4. They told us, okay, do your best trick first, get the crowd behind you. And sure enough, before we get on stage, we suddenly hear buzzers, and I didn't know there were buzzers on this show. And not only the buzzers, are thousands of people booing people they don't like. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be a tough crowd. But the producer said, we're going to hook you up, do your best trick first. We did, got a standing ovation 15 seconds into the routine. You can check it out on Paradiso Dance on YouTube. And that launched a career that really went from mildly successful to we traveled all around the world for 2 years. It was really fun.
That's awesome. And did the traveling stop because of the pandemic, or it just kind of petered out?
Oh, sure. Well, we broke up.
Oh.
So Zoe, she got really tired, my dance partner and wife and then ex-wife. We still danced together, but we broke up as marriage, kind of did a big dent into the traveling business. It's exhausting to travel. I loved it, but she did not. And she wanted a more peaceful lifestyle. So, and she went to pursue a different type of dance, actually. But again, talking about adaptivity, yes, I certainly didn't give up with her. We just did travel. We lived on opposite side of the coast and still did lots of shows, just not as many as we used to. And then I got different partners and formed a dance team. And probably the coolest thing I did, there's this one woman named Rose Dennis came to me at 67 years old and said, I never danced acrobatics in my life, but I want to learn acrobatics. And I told her for 4 months, no way, you can't come to my class. And finally I let her in.
Why did you tell her she can't come?
Oh, I thought I'd get sued. She got hurt.
I'm sorry, what
Yeah,
about?
I thought if she was that old, I thought I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong, but I was proven wrong gladly. But I thought, oh, she comes in this class and she's never done acrobatics. There's going to be, maybe she had training. She was 67.
Okay. Yeah.
So what was interesting about her story is, and one of the things I'm proud of, is it took about 3 years, maybe 2.5 years, but over those 2 years, I gave her private lessons, and then we would do standing ovation routines. You can look up Dave Paris and Rose Dennis, and you'll see some standing ovation shows that we used to do. And it just shows you, for her persistence and both mine, said, okay, it's not going to be what it used to be, but let's go ahead and show a positive message to the world. And then we did some traveling, which was a lot of fun.
Neat. So you were a school teacher.
Yes.
And you were traveling with dancing, and then now you're teaching school again now?
Yes, I've always been teaching, and I've always done acrobatics on the weekends. There are some years I've just did full-time work, but full-time dancing. But almost every year I was doing this on the weekend at night, and then working all day, and then at night just rehearsing. And it's a passion for me, so it was just a joy to and often comical. My principal sometimes says I treat my job like a mistress. She wanted me to make my full passion, but it's just not who I am. I'm passionate about many things.
Yeah. Are you from New York?
I'm from New York, yeah. I may not have a strong accent, but every once in a while it comes out.
Yeah. Well, I spent about 20 years there myself, but my Midwestern accent, still comes out as well. So that's interesting. I was curious about that, as far as you mentioned, like the interest, of course, in beautiful women and then enjoying that for dancing. I was curious, like, if that impacts you, from the relationship side when, you're in a relationship and you're, throwing beautiful women around all night, does that ever get hectic?
Yeah, sure. There's a famous thing in the dance scene. You always know a relationship is serious when the couple disappears, and you always know the relationship is over when they show up back on the social dance scene again. And so, for most relationships, the dancing does cause quite a division if one of the dancers are not as serious or not a dancer, then it can cause tremendous havoc. For me in my relationships, I actually only was in relationships with the people I was dancing with. So that never was an issue except once. And my girlfriend at the time didn't really like what was happening and caused more jealousy. She was upset that I was more passionate about the dance than her. And to be fair, I was. But yeah, and that can be trouble and certainly going to challenge jealousy. But in a good relationship where you know what the dance is and you're communicating well and you don't mix the dance up with anything that would be inappropriate in a relationship, it's clear. But you can't know that unless you're really a dancer or you're super secure in yourself and your partner.
Right, right. So when and how did you get into writing books? Are they self-published or did you use a publisher?
Still
Just
self-published at the moment. Who knows if it'll ever blow up, but it came from just a passion of telling students stories. People would ask, hey, why did the lights go out? And I make up a story that the kids were intrigued by. And then one day I would start teaching a class called social emotional learning. And in that we meet as a circle, work on goals, work on connection. And I said, you know what, I'm going to work on writing a book while you guys work on your goals. And I was always explicit with my process, my struggles. And in doing so, they had a model for what it was like to try to achieve a goal and have an adult say, no, not what you should do, but this is something all human beings struggle with as they try to achieve something. And from that, I was able to write, in my opinion, a phenomenal adolescent book for reluctant readers. They're all short stories called Laughable Legends about different things that have corollaries to what's happening in the world. And then after that, I was so excited, I wrote 2 satires about Donald Trump becoming president and then Donald Trump's presidency called Middle School Election and Middle School President. And
is that hard for you as a teacher to be writing books that could appear to be taking a political position?
Yeah, absolutely. I went out of my way to make it I'm a firm believer presenting information on both sides or multiple sides of an issue so that kids can decide for themselves, and then teaching them the critical thinking skills for not just knowing what they believe, but being open-minded. I find the most open-minded people in the world are middle school students, more so than elementary and more so than any other age, because they are thirsty for knowledge. And I've seen them change their minds on a whole host of issues: death penalty, abortion, animal rights, gun rights, when presented both sides. And I let the kids argue it out. So the books do that. The books are, especially Middle School Election, they're just historically accurate. And I always have characters from either side presenting it. Some will say that I have arguments from the right wing, right-wing friends who said, hey, it's a little too left-wing. I have arguments from the left wing who said it's too right-wing.
Well, that's so I know, kind of a good book. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I said, I got it. I got the right balance then. And it's not entire. What I wanted to do was just chart not only historically what happened, but I want to make it interesting for kids. So kids can read the book and they may not get that it's a reference to Donald Trump. They will just get, it's an interesting character named Kevin King, who this is how he became president and this is what he confronted during his presidency. And these are how people from both sides were arguing what was happening. But if you read it with an adult who knows the stories, it's footnoted so thoroughly that there's everything that happens, every paragraph has a footnote to something that happened in the real world and something they could look up if they so choose. Or if I have adults who read it who love reading the footnotes side by side with the story, and they really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. I just remember for myself in graduate school, it was so frustrating because, whatever opinions the teachers had, I always felt like I had to kind of, act like I had those opinions too, so that I could get an A on my papers and everything.
And that's reality. That's not, you're not making that up. Teachers absolutely, I'm getting my degree now for teaching dance in the schools. And as I'm just working on a paper this morning, I was thinking I could make the argument that I really believe in and get the better grade, or I can just repeat what this person was writing in her paper, and then get a better grade, or I could say what I really think. And it's an interesting challenge. As being almost 50, I'm going to go with what I think because I don't care anymore. But I know that probably back in the old days that it is problematic when gatekeepers hold the value of your work with their grades.
Yeah, I think especially for educators, and especially like you said with middle schoolers, it can be challenging because almost like even by taking on your viewpoint to please you, they can actually start blurring like what is their viewpoint. They're so malleable.
I see the best teachers don't share their opinion.
I agree.
And I go out of my way when we do nonfiction units, I never share my opinion, and I always share multiple perspectives and nuanced perspectives. And I've seen the opposite. I've seen a teacher on the right wing who is saying that Clinton was run by the Russian communist. Said something really, really alt-right, and would only present alt-right. And I challenged her on it, and I said, "Hey, look, you can do this. It's fine, but you got to share everything." She says, "Oh, I'll do that." And then there's another teacher in the room. She says, "No, she never does that." And then I have same thing going on the left with people saying, and I see that, but then I also see a lot of teachers teach really, really with integrity about presenting all perspectives and thinking skills, which I think ultimately is what we want for our students.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. So I know that, we only have a short time, and I really also want to get to a really exciting part of your story, which is that, you were in a coma, you contracted COVID, and then you were in a coma for what, like 34 days or something?
Yeah, 32 days. Back in March, I contracted COVID, very likely from my brother. I was socially distant. He was the only person I had contact with, and turned out he didn't know, but he had it. And he's my same age, same size, and he was fine after a week. I went 88 days in the hospital and 32 days on a ventilator and ECMO machine, which the ECMO machine is like for people who won't make it on the ventilator and need even more work. So I'm very, very fortunate that I went to a hospital that had an ECMO machine. But yeah, I was one of the earliest people that contracted COVID, and they said I was the sickest person in the hospital with COVID, and everybody else who was that sick died. And they called my recovery miraculous. So that's somewhat high functioning. I can take no credit for that. That I think is both the doctors and the prayers of people who prayed for me. But I will take some credit because there was a moment when I woke up, I remembered all of my dreams. Not all, I shouldn't say all of them. I remember quite a lot of them, certainly the milestone ones. And I remember quite early, I did recognize the moment I was gonna die. And I was in a theater and I looked at the spirit, this Japanese Buddha, looked at me, and it was a gatekeeper. And I asked him, "Hey, am I going to live?" And he couldn't give the words. He was so sad, but just decided to paint a white stripe on the side of his face. And with that white stripe, he let me know that no, I was going to die. And at that moment, the biggest terror, I can feel the goosebumps come over me just recalling that even a year later. The biggest terror came over me, and I pleaded for him, and he kept telling me, "No, you're going to die." And it was hours of pleading until finally he said, "I'll give you a chance." And that was a part of me that never gave up with Latin dance. Even though I wasn't very good, it's a part of me that fought through being a school teacher in the hardest times. And I said, you know what? I absolutely want to live. And I did. So there is the high functioning part about not giving up. That absolutely is an element of who I am. And although sometimes I also give the doctors credit, and really New York City credit, because if New York City didn't flatten the curve, there would have not been enough hospital beds and not enough machine. The ECMO machine is what saved my life. So I have a lot of people to thank for this.
Wow, David, that is such a powerful story. And I'm glad that you do give yourself credit. I mean, obviously the doctors and the machines, I mean, to me, that's a given, like, of course. And I, personally have known some of the doctors who have been on those front lines, and I just know that we're all so grateful. At the same time, I do think it's important that you give yourself the credit as well, that you had that will to live. As a psychologist, as a clinical psychologist, I've done a lot of my training was actually in hospitals.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, looking at the psychology of people who are critically ill, and recognizing the role of attitude, even potentially in a coma, that there obviously was still some kind of activity happening in your brain, that, you were manufacturing, this scene that you described. At least that's what I'm assuming, unless,
That's right.
maybe, I don't know, but I'm the scientist in me is just going to attribute it to that, your brain manufactured that scene with the Japanese, person.
The Buddha, yeah.
Yeah, the Buddha. And the fact that you wrestled with that, and that it was so clear for you that for hours or however long the time actually was, who knows, it could have been days, it could have been minutes, who knows, but that your will was so clear, that there was no ambivalence, that there was an insistence, that even on that precipice, and even with that sadness, and even with that fear, that you didn't lose your resolve, and that you were able to, really lean into it and fight for your life. That's really powerful.
Thank you. I didn't know you were a psychologist in the hospital. I devote a whole chapter to this amazing relationship I had with my therapist, and I'm such a big advocate of what you do and what she did. I was so scared. I was crying every day, multiple hours over the shock and the trauma. And this woman was just able to hear me, nurture me, and put me back on my feet in a way that I'm just super happy with what resources given to patients, and a big advocate for everybody else to that mental health piece is so key in recovery, and especially when you come out of any traumatic experience.
Yeah, it is. The Greek root of psychology for psyche actually is, the Greek meaning for that is spirit, so there really is a lot of overlap there. I was a yoga teacher before I was a clinical psychologist. I don't work obviously in hospital settings now. That was just part of my training, but I'm really glad that I had that training. It really gave me, I think, a lot of insight, just kind of about the parameters of what mental health or physical health can be. So that's really such a powerful story. What would you say, do you ever think back to that time? And I love how you're connecting it as well to the gritty part of you that was able to just, get out there on the Latin dance floor, or just, get out there and do whatever needed to be done, that sense of resolve and determinism. Do you feel like you had any big takeaways from that? Do you ever reconnect with that Japanese Buddha figure if you go into meditations or anything like that?
I go to it all the time, every day. There's no doubt, there's not a day I don't live that I'm not, sometimes less so now than it used to be, but those first 6 months coming out, when you touch, a lot of coma survivors will say this, that when you're near death, you experience a level of lightness that makes it very difficult to come back to the world. And I'm sure you confront, or you've met patients like that. And I certainly was like that. And every single time I woke up, I would think, I'm now back into this reality. Do I really want to be here? And it was only connecting to that moment, that not only connecting to it, not because it was a resolve to live, but it was a wanting to live, and then resolving, well, why do I want to live? And I know why. I want to dance again. I want to go back on America's Got Talent. I want to be a better teacher. There are books I need to still write. There are connections I still need to make. And when I wake up and I have that moment of doubt, it's only when I connect to my passion, my love, that I go, oh yeah, I do want to be here. And any level of pain or ambivalence just washes away with the inspiration of what I really want the most.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I kind of reminds me, in my book, Nervous Energy, Harness the Power of Your Anxiety, I share this story about when I was a teenager, I had a boyfriend that tried to commit suicide. And I was with him in the hospital while he was in a coma.
Oh, wow.
And there was, quite a, consensus that he may not, wake up from the coma. He's actually now passed away. He passed away years later. He was just a troubled person. He made it out of that coma though. And I remember that the way that, the moment was, I picked up, I get emotional talking about it, but I remember I picked up his hand and I put it on me. And when he felt my body, he started to come to, it was, I think that there is something, as you said, about just really connecting with, what we need and what we want, that's so powerful. So what is the name of your book that you wrote about this experience?
Yeah, if I could just add, it's a beautiful thing, beautiful moment you just shared. And people will often ask me, not, are you awake, or does it make a difference, the energy you bring outwards? My dance partner had them playing 24/7, all of my favorite salsa songs and our performances. And I know I spent weeks dancing in the best environments, in the best clubs, and the best shows, and I had a great time to some degree, which is why sometimes I wonder, how much did I really struggle? Because a lot of it was quite fun when I was on the drugs I was on and in the dream world.
But
And
that was
so
reconnecting you with your reason. I mean,
that's right. And in essence, it was doing that. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. So my book is called A COVID Story. You can find that on Amazon or my website, davidparisbooks.com. And I offer it for free digitally. You just email me and say, hey, I'd like a digital copy. I'm quite confident it will both make you, make you laugh. It'll make you, some people, they cry, but everybody feels warm because it's not just a story about COVID. It's about story about recovery, about community. I don't write it from just my perspective. There are over 30 voices of the medical community who are sharing their perspective. It's an oral history of what happened. And easy read for those people, because I'm a middle school teacher in New York City. Nothing, you'll read it really fast and be entertained. As a middle school teacher, if you're not interesting, you're gonna have a really hard time with those group of kids. So that's the way I write, and there's not one person except my a family member who didn't like the book. So I'm pretty sure you'll like it.
So davidparisbooks.com or on Amazon. And, we'll put those links in the show notes. And then I'm curious though, too, as you said, it's kind of an oral history, I think is the word that you use.
Right, yeah.
I'm curious if you're doing an Audible version, because a lot of people do want to hear these stories.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. It's good. It's on the agenda, and I'm going to put it out probably on YouTube and make an Audible, because I read maybe 3% of the books I read. 97% I listen on audible.com. So I should make it available. I haven't got to it yet. And because I'm a middle school teacher, I talk with a little bit of a rhythm that'll make the story come alive more. Haven't done it yet, but it's on the agenda for sure.
Yeah, I think that the Audible is important. Both of my books I did on Audible as well. And I think especially for the type of book that, you are doing as well, when we're doing a book where we're, trying to convey something about a personal strength or a technique. In psychology, there's something called modeling, not fashion modeling, but when we hear or see someone saying or doing an attitude or a, technique that we want to learn or emulate, it's great to read it, but there's something about hearing someone else doing it. I think that makes it somehow a step easier for some people, at least, to kind of take that on and grow from it. So I'm a big fan of the Audible books myself. Well, David Paris, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. And
thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I hope I'll get to see you on America's Got Talent again.
Next season. I talked to the producer and he said, I'm just getting my body back. I used to be able to lift two women over my head and walk them around the room. Right now, I just got to the skill of lifting with one arm over my head. I'm working with my partner as we speak. And I called the
next
producer.
Time I come to New York, will you lift me up? I'm not that
I can. And it looks like you're married. I can teach your husband how to do it too. It's something that I love teaching it as well. So I will lift you, also teach your husband to lift you. And that's my other pleasure. I love teaching. I love teaching it to anybody and any size, by the way. Not that somebody Zoe can lift me. She's 100 pounds and I'm as of this morning, 266. So you'd be surprised at what is possible with good technique.
That's fabulous. I think that's a metaphor for life. We'd be surprised what is possible with good technique. Right? David Paris, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, but pleasure for me too. Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye. Wow, that was definitely an interesting interview. I really didn't know quite what to expect. David has so many hats that he wears. It was really interesting to just have the chance to talk with him about all of the different areas, where he goes in life, as many high functioning people do, whether it be, in his dance or being an author, or that social emotional side as well. What incredible, social and emotional intelligence he has, and also such a warm and relatable person. So thanks for taking the time to check out the interview with David Paris. I hope to see you again at the next interview, or if you want to connect on Instagram or YouTube, on all the different areas, I'm pretty much everywhere. So looking forward to connecting with you wherever's best. Till the next time, take care.